Thrustmaster, and once again we're actually at the iconic track that everyone out there in the world should know. It's Bathurst, Mount Panorama said already, and with me on the microphone is actually Luke Rogers. My name is Rene Buttler, just in case you missed that one. Luke, what do we have today?
We have one of the, if not the most challenging racetrack on the planet, although I know you will say the Nordschleife is, but for me this is one of the most difficult tracks on the planet. You have long straights, you have a high downforce mountain section, which I think overall is about 1.2 thousand feet of elevation change across the lap. So there's so much compromise in the setup, you know, because if you're using a Mercedes, you might want to be good on the straights. If you're using an Audi, you might want to be good on that mountain. So it's such a diverse track in terms of the challenges it presents. And it's also a track that's unforgiving. If you make a mistake anywhere, you're going in a wall. If you make a mistake on that downhill section, you're pinballing like Chaz Mostert in 2015. So it's going to be a challenge. 12 hours, no mistakes. It's pretty hard to do.
Yeah, we're obviously coming out of Route 1, which was Suzuka, and now coming to Bathurst, which is a track full of variety in terms of corners, in terms of how we can take the curbs. And you said that already, those walls are terrifying going downhill. It would be very interesting to see today how the teams cope with that and how everyone gets through. Obviously, we want everyone to make it, for 12 hours to get through there, but we also know it will be quite a challenge for everyone to stay alive.
Yeah, and the next race we have is a Spa 24 hours. So I think the mentality of survival that Bathurst sort of instills in the drivers, you know, there's people that do survive the 12 hours of this track because it really is survival. If you can then bring that to Spa, you're going to be in such good form, I think, for the race. So this is really the sort of the beginning of the challenge of the series. Suzuka was sort of the introduction to endurance racing. You know, it's a track that's forgiving. There's lots of runoff area. You know, there's no real tight areas where a mistake is putting you in the wall. So this is the first, for me, of the two real big challenges in this endurance series, the Sim Good World Cup by Thrustmaster. So it's going to be good. It's going to be scary for, I think, a lot of these teams. But I'm quite excited by qualifying because balance of performance changed in the recent hotfix 1.5.7. So it's a complete unknown which cars are good around here. I'm expecting the Hondas to do well. I think we have two. I think the Aston Martins are going to surprise people here because it's got good straight line speed and it's nice and stable through the corners. So I'm sort of thinking that we're going to see a bit of a shake-up of the field here because in round one it was dominated by Audis and Mercedes at Suzuka. So it's all up in the air today.
It definitely is with that new hotfix and new balance of performance, but I also want to see how big the difference will be between the grit that we get in qualification and then later on how the cars cope with the endurance part of this race. It is 12 hours of Bathurst. It is you against that track and against a lot of other very talented drivers, not to forget about that one. And as we know, not every car is fast throughout the entire stint or even throughout an entire day. So it'll be very interesting to see if there are cars that might be on top in qualification or not.
Yeah, and I believe, talking of the Honda NSX, that we have a hot lap thanks to Coach Dave Kyalami, so take it away.
Hello everyone, it's Coach Dave here, and I'm about to take you for a lap around Bathurst or Mount Panorama in the Honda NSX GT3 Evo. As we're heading down into turn 1, Hell's Corner, you want to get as close to the curb as you can, maximize the exit, get on the power as early as possible to maximize your speed down this long straight, mountain straight. Good place for fuel saving if you're in a slipstream. A little bit of lift and coast will get you a long way later on in the race. Also good overtaking opportunity if you get the positioning right into Griffin's Bend, which we're going into right now. You brake at the exit road, stay nice and close to the curb on the inside, maximize the exit, stay away from the wall in the race, but if you want for the ultimate lap time, get as close to the wall as possible. We're now heading into the cutting. Again, very blind, just over the crest. You want to stay as close to the walls here as well. It's almost like a street track, but much faster as we're going through Quarry Corner, and probably the most scariest part of the track in real life, and even in the sim when you're under pressure and someone's behind you and you're racing for the lead or for a very important position. Up over the crest, big lift through there in the race, and then as we're going down the hill towards the dipper, maximizing the curbs, getting as close to the walls again, and just shifting down the gears. As you're going downhill, it's much more difficult to control the car. They always say that it's easy to drive fast uphill, it's much more difficult to drive fast downhill. Forest Elbow is much tighter than you think, and this is why a lot of people get caught out on the exit. They perceive it to be a 90-degree corner when it is in fact more like a hairpin. So overslowed the car in entry for Forest Elbow, which we just went through, and get on the power just at the apex. Do not get on the power before the apex, otherwise you're going to drive yourself into the wall. We're now heading down the famous Conrad Straight and approaching the chase. Another good overtaking opportunity. Brake earlier than you think as you go up the hill, getting a nice early apex and then maximizing the exit once again as we finish the lap quicker than you think. Even though it's a long track, it doesn't last that long. All right, final turn, get a nice good exit, maximize, cross the line for an awesome lap time, and we hope you enjoy the SimGrid Bathurst 12 hour. Thanks for watching.
Is a real surprise candidate around this track. It's not a car that you'd think could be fast, but it's actually rapid around here. And I think that would be helped really by Coach Dave Academy setups, which I believe for that car being released this week. So if there is a car you're looking to check out, if you want to use some setups, maybe you're like me and you're not confident in setting your cars up yourself, check out Coach Dave Academy's new setups. It should be this week. I know it's coming soon.
Definitely. I mean, the NSX is a great looking car, and we know it can be quick, but it seems not to be a popular choice among most of the teams. So I'm really looking forward to see if they can do in Bathurst here, because I think it is a car that deserves to be on the top spot. And especially now with the setups available on Coach Dave Academy soon, I hope to see way more of them on the grid. That will be great.
Oh, Jimmy's just done up in chat. Called himself a cutie because he is the only cutie in chat, the real cutie. But back to the racing. I want to fanboy about a driver that's actually driving today. We've got Marco Mappelli in the field, one of the drivers, and he actually raced in the 2020 Bathurst 12 hours this year, real life. He, I believe, finished 9th for the Orange One FFF racing team with Antonio Caldarelli, I believe, was on that team. So I'm excited to see, whether that form that he showed in the real life race transitions to the simulated race, because I think a set of course is a game or a sim. No, I'm going to get crucified for saying that. Oh, apparently it's not the real Marco Mappelli. I've been lied to. Never mind. We move on. But anyway, what I was trying to say, what I was going to say is that
get to the point.
ACC is a game, or is it a sim? It's not exactly the same as real life, but I think as a sim, it's one of the best at simulating car physics. And I think if you compare a lap run here, especially to real life, I mean, the car's a little bit faster in ACC, but the challenge is exactly the same. You can see how the car gets thrown around. Take Skyline, for example. When you hit that curb in the middle, the car gets thrown around just like it does in real life. And I was hoping it was a real market, because I was going to say we could interview him at some point and compare the challenge. But I think it's really going to live up to its real life counterpart. It's a track that's so well known for big crashes. There's been pileups. I think in 1981 there was literally the entire grid was involved in a pileup in the cutting. So it's a track it's terrifying because of those crashes that happen, but it's also a track that produces great racing. And we look back to 2015 with a four-way battle between Aston Martin, Nissan, Audi, and I believe it was a Bentley as well that was thrown in there, the boat, which goes surprisingly well around here. So it's such an exciting track, such a scary track. And as we get into qualifying, I think this is going to be a real crucial part of the track, because although I say it's great for racing, track position is a big factor, especially across that mountain. There's no real overtaking opportunities. It's occasionally you see a pass into Skyline, occasionally you see a pass into Forest Elbow, like we had last year in the real life Bathurst 12 hour. But I think generally speaking, you're looking at Conrad and Mountain Straights as the two passing opportunities. And if you're one of those cars that can get towards the top in qualifying and get a bit of a lead on people, pull out of the draft, which can be so crucial down the Conrad Straight, I think you're going to be in a really good position for the overall 12 hours. So qualifying is crucial. Not making a mistake is even more important, because then you'll be right at the back of the field. But on the screen right now, we have one of your drivers, Nico Hillebrand, in the Buttler Power Motorsports car. How do you think his chances are going to be, Rene?
Hard tell, to be honest. I mean, we're missing one car. We got the 557 and 556 in the World Cup. Unfortunately, we won't field the 556 today, as one of the drivers is on holidays, one is moving houses right now, so not enough manpower to bring both cars to Bathurst here. But with Nico on the 557, I think we got a good driver to actually handle the start and the qualification. If he's in the right mood and hitting his marks, then I think we can do fairly well. Something that might be a bit new to our roster today is actually that we will bring Aiden instead of Tristan. So Aiden just comes off his first title in the GT4 Championship in ACC, and it will be the first time that he's actually filling in one of our endurance grids. So let's see how he does with the rest of the pack, with the rest of the team, and I hope that our Audi survives as long as possible, and that we at least get some good shots of it, having great fights, good racing. But other than that, I really don't mind who's leading as long as we get a good race.
Talking of Audis, I think the GT3 Pro field is nearly half Audis. There's a lot of Mercedes as well. Those two cars going pretty well around the Intercontinental tracks. But if you go back to GT3 Silver, because obviously this is split into two fields with the Pro and the Silver class, Silver's being dominated by Aston Martins. I mean, we've only had one race, so I should clarify that. But 4 of the top 5 cars in the GT3 Silver field were Aston Martins, and then 4 of the top 5 in the GT3 Pro field were Audis and Mercedes. So I'm intrigued to see whether the Silver class Aston Martins can compete around here, or whether once again we're going to see the Pro teams really pull ahead, and especially those Audis and Mercedes dominate, because this is a track that suits both cars. You have those long straights that the Mercedes absolutely eats up for breakfast. You have the Audi that is twitchy but fast through that mountain section. I mean, I think if it's anything like real life, all those Audi drivers are going to be having code browns every time they approach McPhillamy Park.
Yeah, we know from the real life counterpart, obviously, that lately the Audis didn't have that much luck at Mount Panorama, but might be different here. Or we have Beavers on camera right now. Matt Beavers in the Rookie Monsters Honda NSX, currently the only NSX I actually see on our grid on the left, but we have a bit more cars than those 23. So I might be mistaken, putting up a time already, 0.7 seconds slower than the Audi of Sherritt right now, that's leading the pack. And like I said, we talked about the NSX not being a super popular choice, great looking car though, done by Honda in Japan, but it could fit actually that the track profile here of Bathurst, at least I think so. So let's see if Matt Davis maybe can show the true potential of that car.
And it's a car that it's, I think, quite malleable. You know, you have some cars that just are good at certain things. You know, the Audi's good through corners, the Porsche is good on the brakes, the Mercedes is good in a straight line. But the Honda, you can sort of tailor to the way you want it to drive. You can make it twitchy, you can make it understeer. And I think being able to bring that stability into a car that's also quite good through the corners will make it really good across the mountain section, especially these corners here. You know, you've got Quarryton, you've got Reed Park and Silmar Park, and even McPhillamy, I think, is where the Honda's going to shine, just because it sort of gives you that cornering speed and the stability that, you know, maybe an Audi doesn't give you. As you're saying, I think in 2020 in the real life races, something like 4 or 5 Audis crashed out in qualifying in the race. They were joined by a Lamborghini in McPhillamy Park. Well, they weren't the only guys that spun out there, but yeah, I think this Honda can really compete. But talking of compete, we've already got a 59.4. The best lap I've ever done around here is at 2.7. And I consider that one of the best laps I've ever driven in a sim. Over a second off the pole time. It's honestly a little bit depressing, but that is a ridiculous lap from Jordan Sherritt. We saw how fast he was in the Suzuka round. I think his team actually won the race. Yeah, they did. They won the race overall. So it looks like they're still on form. It looks like it wasn't a one-hit wonder. We've got 30 minutes left, but starting on pole will be a great achievement for that team.
Yeah, even though that we have that many minutes left actually in the qualification, looking at the timing order right now, seeing that everyone until 19th and even 20th, I can't scroll down right now, is in the 2-minute flat range, which is great. I mean, 1:59 for the first 4 cars, and then everyone else is exactly 2 minutes 0 seconds. That seems to be that we will have a very, very tight qualification, which is great to witness, and it will show that race pace is probably similar to that.
Yeah, I think we might have a couple aliens at the front. Jordan is, I think, a pretty well-known alien at this point in the ACC world. But in terms of that sort of midfield, as you're saying, I mean, you look at the gaps. You're 1.215 off the pace, 1.236, 1.236, 1.272. They're so close in that sort of, 8th to 20th bracket. And if they're as close in the actual race, you're going to have this big pack of cars that's driving around nose to tail. I mean, last week we had the race at Laguna Seca, and we saw how important traffic was there. So I think something that the leaders are going to really struggle with today is that exact same thing, that traffic. Because this is a track where, yes, you've got the 2 straights so you can pass, but if you get traffic in the mountain section, you're just going to have to wait. You have to be patient. And that kind of mentality, I think, is going to be really important. Knowing that, oh, I shouldn't send it too wide into Skyline, or I shouldn't try to pass someone in the cutting and stuff like that when you're coming to lap cars later on. For those guys right at the front, you're looking sort of the top 5 right now, because that is where you make mistakes. You send it around the outside and you hit the curb too hard on the Skyline, you're going in a wall.
It is a tricky course with all of these walls being so close to the actual road, which makes it a lot harder to spin and get away with it, which is what we saw on Suzuka many times. Like, obviously mistakes happen, especially in an endurance race that covers more than 10 hours. Like, we're doing full 12 hours here at Bathurst. So doing mistakes is part of it, but it's way more costly here in Bathurst than it is in Suzuka, and also more costly than in the next round when we actually hit Spa in Belgium. So it will be interesting to see if some teams might even try to be a bit on the slower side, trying to take it a bit more carefully around every corner, especially in the first few hours, just finding their pace, trying to figure out where they are in terms of performance compared to everyone else, and then later on really pick their fights rather than trying to go all out right from the get-go.
Yeah, it's a track as well where to set those sort of really fast quality times, you have to completely throw the car into corners, especially I think Skyline's a great example of that. In qualifying, you are smacking that inside curb in the downhill S, and in the race you just don't want to do that, because all it takes is you to hit it at the wrong angle and your car is being projected into a wall, and you're just going to start pinballing down the mountain because your car will not stop. You hit the inside wall, bounce to the outside, and you just go down the hill like Chaz Mostert did. So it's going to be I think we're going to look at sort of low 201s as sort of race pace, just because you can sort of consistently do those kind of laps, but the 159s and the 2.0s, doing those consistently is a terrifying experience.
We're actually still on the Mercedes of Jonathan Lee right now from Champion Motorsports. Be an easy one to tell with all that white and a bit of blue on the livery. Currently only on 14th position. Is a car from the Pro Class though, and I think they didn't even set a time yet, which is actually why we don't see any gap between them and the current leader. So let's see how they do on their very first lap, coming down the mountain right now, and then heading towards that fast right kink and then into heartbreaking moment like that's here. You try to really slam the brakes and then roll it into the turn, try to use a bit of the banking there, and then really get a lot of momentum out of the corner down to the last left-hander before they cross the line again. See what Lee is capable of doing in the very first attempt that actually counts. Let's see. Oh, up to 7th right now. Quite fitting with their starting number as well. I like that.
Had to get it perfect there, but this is a track where I think everyone knows it for the mountain ride. That is the sort of the famous part of the track, but you think the rest of it is a bit of a break and a bit easier, but really, I mean, the chase, but you crest over a little ridge as you turn in for the corner, which makes the rear so light and so floaty, and so pretty much you're always going to be sliding through there. And then you've got 2 90-degree corners. Well, one of them is called Hell's Corner for a reason. That's not a joke name. Hell's Corner turn 1 of this track is one of the most surprisingly difficult corners, I think, on any track. See, I mean, look how unassuming it is. It's just a 90-degree turn. There's no banking. There's nothing on the outside that looks scary. There's no massive sausage curb on the inside that's going to kill you. But so many times you see mistakes there. And Murray's Corner is basically the same. The final corner of the track, it's so easy to lose time through there. So, although the mountain looks scary, with the walls, you're going uphill, you're going downhill. There's something like a 20-degree drop in the dipper as you sort of plunge off that cliff. But really, the whole track is such a challenge, and that's why I think it's such a great track, because at all points in the lap, you're being pushed to drive your best. At all points in the lap, one mistake can ruin everything. I mean, even if you go off in the chase, you're going to get projected into a gravel trap, and you're going to lose so much time if you're lucky enough to stay out of the wall.
We've got James Bacon right now, SRJ Motorsport. We quickly had the Dave Coach Academy car on camera right before that. Obviously, these guys fairly quick, we know that, but sometimes a bit on the unlucky side so far in the SimGrit races. Let's see if that will be a bit better in today's Bathurst 12 hours. While we actually approach the last 7.5 minutes of our qualification session, and currently it is still Jordan Sherritt leading, not really surprising, number 1 car, number 1 spot. And right behind that is Matt Beavers in the Honda NSX that we talked before. Already saw in the chat some people calling it the one-trick pony, since it runs very well on Bathurst. It's doing quite well, that's for sure. With Beavers bringing the rookie monster car onto second position. And then it's Kirill Antonov and William Hendricks for the top 4, even though that changed now with Andrea Cappuccia to actually bring the first Ferrari inside the top 5.
Yeah, it's nice to see a bit of diversity up at the front. You know, you're sort of expecting at this track to see Audis and Mercedes right at the front. And if we look at the actual teams that did well at Suzuka, you know, the teams we're expecting to do well here. You've got the 1 in the Audi, you've got the 11 who finished second in the Mercedes, 56 finished third in the Mercedes, 49 finished fourth in an Audi. So the teams we know for a fact are fast based off those finishes at Suzuka. I'm expecting to be at the front, but seeing that Ferrari, seeing that NSX compete as well, you know, 4 different manufacturers in the top 4 right now. The Nissan in 12th is not doing too bad. It's only second off the pace. There's even a Bentley, you know, down in 18th. And I've seen, I think Mr. Baker did something like 300 laps in the qualifying for this World Cup around Bathurst. So he has a lot of experience here, and I'm expecting him to be pretty fast as well. So it's nice to see diversity. It's nice to see, you know, we don't just have 4 or 5 Audis at the front, or 4 or 5 Porsches, you know, how you get on the GC World Challenge races. It is worth pointing out, this is a championship. It's not a single race, so you can't pick your car per race. You pick your car for the 4 tracks. You know, you've got Suzuka where you kind of need more downforce. You've got here where you need a bit of everything. You know, you need that front straight line speed for Mountain and Conrod. You need the braking for places like the cutting, places like the chase. You need the downforce on the uphill and the downhill sections. And then you go to Spa where, you know, something like a Porsche really struggles on the Kemmel Straight and then comes alive on the rest of the track. You've got an Audi that does exactly the same. You've got the Mercedes that flies, the Bentley and the Nissan that are pretty good on those straights as well. And then we're ending it with Kyalami, another track that's, I think, quite different. So the fact that we have a lot of different tracks means that I think across the whole series, we're going to see a bit of diversity, and that's what we're seeing here, you know, with the NSX coming alive. And it's really nice to see.
Definitely. I love the different characteristics of the cars in this class. I mean, that's why it's so interesting to watch. That was quite interesting, actually. I think someone just smashed his qualification lap there. Bentley looked a bit, yeah, it's not brand new, I would say, with the hook being open a bit after that severe impact down the hill there. There was that? Oh, it was one of the Audis actually standing in its way there. Spinning previously, and then
facing the wrong way.
And there's another Audi in the background
all over the
spinning,
place,
facing the other way. I seem like once again this isn't really an Audi weekend so far. Let's see if they will do a bit better right now, because seeing them spinning twice behind each other now is not really a great start though. There's the car that just caused that. Yep, it's truly got off-road.
It's thinking it's a rally car. It's playing the wrong game. This is ACC, not WC9, so I don't know what he's done over there, but it's an interesting line to take. I think he's just trying to get out of the way of everyone as he gets back to the pits. But yeah, I mean, the Audi is so twitchy. I mean, that is what it's known for. It's fast through the corner. I mean, that's why in the cars his steering is completely wrong. That's going to be a challenge to drive. I mean, he's going to come back into the pits. He should be able to repair the car, I believe. I'm not sure exactly what repair rules we have for qualifying, but yeah, that's not something you want to be doing with 3 minutes left. I don't actually think you'd really be able to get another lap in. So it's a shame, but they qualified okay. They weren't in the end in the worst position in the world, but yeah, I mean, as I was saying at the start of this, qualifying is quite important around here, and especially if you're in an Audi. I think you want to sort of get to the front and then come off the pace a little bit, because as we said, that car is twitchy. Oh, that's a bit of a crunch for the Bentley, but it's a car that you don't want to be driving at 100% pace around here, because if you do that, you will crash. And that's what we're seeing in qualifying right now. We're seeing Audi after Audi, you know, sliding, hitting a wall here or there, and that's just the nature of the car. So I think qualifying is really important for those teams, getting to the front and then being able to manage your pace through the mountain.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of these Audis will actually have quite a challenge then in the race to make up the positions they lost here in qualification. Seems like they very rarely get a full lap without any issues or incidents. Now with one of the few Porsches. I absolutely love that car. Like the Porsche GT3 is such a nice balance. And
Fanboy.
I'm sorry, man.
Fanboy.
Like, no, it's like, come on. I race part of their lineup in real life. They're great cars, very unique in terms of their handling, especially on the Apex because they tend to slide a lot around the front end, which I like. I just think the Porsche is one of the most aggressive cars in the grid here today in terms of fighting, because you can position the Porsche nearly everywhere on the corner if you know what you're doing with throttle input and you really use the rear engine for that. So, and that's what I like. I like drivers that are able to totally change the lines and still make it work. And we know that doesn't work with every car because some of the cars are way more sensitive to how you approach a turn and how you get through with speed. So I'm really looking forward to see a lot of action by the Porsche drivers.
Like a casual car guy that doesn't really know much about racing, I just pick cars because of how they sound and the scream of those Porsches, especially the RSR. That's one of my favorite cars, the GTE Porsche. The scream of that. Ooh, ouch. That's unfortunate for the Audi. Once again, another Audi having an issue, but there's nothing quite like the sound of a Porsche driving past you at 200 kph.
I mean, yeah, the GTE car is a completely different world in terms of sound. And it's screaming. I was there in Le Mans 2018 on the stands, and if it's more than one of those GTE Porsches, you're basically bleeding out of your ears. Like, 1 is fine, sounds great, 2 is not great, and 3 is really killing you. It's amazing to witness, but to be honest, I'm totally fine with just one of them. That will be enough. So the GT3 is a bit more on the nice side in terms of how
tamer, I think.
Yeah, it is a bit tame. It doesn't rev that loud. It has a completely different exhaust system. Obviously, they changed that on the GTE cars lately. There's another Audi going off-road. Really, I think that's the niche market right here. If you're selling off-road suspensions for Audi teams, it seems like they really want them.
I mean, there's a rally version of that car, isn't there? I believe
On the R8.
Yeah, the R8 rally. There's a
Probably a
GT3
rally car in every car. Yeah.
Oh no, but there's like this weird series in rally where they race like GT3s with like rally spec suspension and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure the Audi's one of them. It's like there's a Porsche, Aston Martin, and an Audi, I think. I'm just going off my knowledge of. I think it's in Dirt Rally, but I think they're in the wrong game. I'm going to be crucial. Every time I say game, someone somewhere is going to be pissed off. So we'll say sim. But yeah, I mean, there's so many Audis and they're just struggling right now. And we've said it like 3 or 4 times already. That's just the nature of the car. And I think it's something you see at places like the Le Mans, where you sort of compromise your setup for stability in endurance racing, right? I mean, you actually race endurance races. You have much more experience to this than me. But I think it's something you need to do. You know, maybe putting a bit of understeer in the car, or just giving it a little bit more tire grip at the expense of raw pace. And I think the Audi is just one of the hardest cars to do that with, right?
To be honest, I'm not quite sure. Like I drove an Audi GT3 car a few years back, and it was the first LMS version, so not the current Evo version. And it feels really like stable. And of course, as soon as you go into endurance distances in terms of race length, you want a car that's a bit easy on the driver, because even though many people think, oh, these like GT3 cars, they must be hella drive in real life because they must be so hard, it's a top class. Of course not. These are customer race cars, basically built that everyone that somehow knows how to get a car around the track is capable of doing that if you have enough money to do so. And therefore, they're set up in a way that makes it simple and not that super exhausting to actually get them around the track. If you set up your car in endurance to be on the edge and really using all the rear to turn in, and you really want it to be snappy to get that 10th out of every single corner, then you're probably destroying your drivers, which is why that rarely happens. There are a few car classes where people still tend to sometimes risk that, and let's say races between 3-4 hours, because you can basically do that with 2 different drivers. But most setups you will see in endurance racing are a bit more on the understeery side, because it's way better to handle than having a rear that constantly wants to overtake you.
And we barely even spoke about it, but you see how close it was at the front. Obviously, Jordan Sherritt on par with the number 1 car, the current championship leader, but 5 cars within 2.5 tenths around here, up in the top position. So really close qualifying. And even if you look at that midfield, I think there was something like 10 or 15 cars within half a second. So we're going to see so much, I think, competitive racing here. But I think we're sort of going to see 3 or 4 sort of packs develop, right? You have that front grid of all the cars within about half a second of pole that should be able to stick fairly together, especially at the start of the race. And then you get back to sort of the 8, 9 tenths slower towards sort of the 1.4, 1.5 seconds, which is sort of the tail end of the GT3 Pro series, or the Pro field. You're just going to see them race it out for top 10 finish. And then you come to GT3 Silver, where you have those Aston Martins that have been doing so well. And then you have the sort of the, I don't want to say backmarkers, but sort of the underdogs, the teams that maybe don't have experience sim racing. I mean, I try to qualify for this. I've never done an endurance race before. I think the longest race I've done is 3 hours. I try to qualify for it. And I know there are teams in this that are on a sort of similar level in terms of experience. But there we go. There's the timings. I mean, 159.1 is absurd.
And that's really trick from Jordan once again, but basically just showing why they're championship leader currently. Antonov on second, Malinovsky on third, Beavers bringing the Honda NSX on fourth, and then Marek Shins on fifth. Although I'm a bit surprised about Harry Spears in there. It's a 2-minute 5, and he's listed as 7th, but the same for Malinovsky. So
that's last lap. Left lap.
Oh yeah, that was
You spoon.
I was really confused. Like, why
That's
is
all
he
good.
in the list twice? And
It'd be impressive to qualify 7th to 205. But as pointed out by our YouTube admin, I believe that's Michael, I might be wrong, but 12th, 13th, and 14th with identical lap times to the, what is that, 1,000th of a second? Yes, 1,000th of a second. So that is really awesome to see. That's how tight this field is. I mean, you look, 11th place with Jardia, the 0.792 off, dropped back at 10th, 15th. All those cars are so close together. And we also saw at the front there were 3 manufacturers in the top 4, the NSX, the Mercedes, and the Audi, and they're all within 0.2 of a second of each other. So it's nice to see some diversity. Yes, we've still got Audis and Mercedes at the front. I know there'll be people in the chat complaining about that, but it's nice to see the NSX pop up and compete. We know for a fact that there's a fast Ferrari in here because they really weren't far off the pace. We know that cars like the Bentley and the Nissan, whilst not necessarily fast over one lap, are great on fuel, which means they do better in the pit stops. They're nice and stable, which means you make less mistakes. They've got pretty good straight line speed, which means it's quite easy to overtake. So I think we're going to see a really competitive race here, and I'm very excited for the start.
It should definitely be an exciting 12 hours coming with the SimGrid World Cup Round 2. Obviously presented by Thrustmaster, also supported by Coach Dave Academy. So it's 12-hour endurance racing on one of the most challenging tracks in the world, or even the most challenging, depends on where you live and actually what's your opinion on that. But it will be hard for all the teams to actually get through this maze of walls and downhill, uphill sections, starting in just a few. So if you want to see the entire, especially the race start, then follow the link that you can see currently in the chat. Make sure that you're ready for 11:50 when we hit the race stream and get ready for round 2. Round 1 was Suzuka, so just so that everyone is aware, now we're hitting Bathurst, then it's over to Spa. Don't miss that. And is there anything to add, Luke?
I'm just excited. It's going to be a crazy start. I mean, one of my favourite moments ever at Bathurst was 1981, right at the start of the race in the Bathurst 1000. There was a pile-up in the cutting, right? Every single car was involved in that crash because the leaders spun out. I'm a little bit scared that we might see something similar, maybe in the mid-pack, but I think especially that first lap is going to be crazy.
All right, I guess that's it for now for the qualification stream. As set, check out the link in the chat right now. Make sure that you're ready for the big race start here at the SimGrid World Cup presented by Thrustmasters, and then we see you guys at the starting grid.